As I'm sure we're all aware, anyone can break a contract if they want to. The only problem with it is that the other party then has rights against you if you break a contract. So the starting point is, yes, governments can break contracts, but maybe they'll face a damages claim. But I will now explain that the government does get special treatment in some circumstances. And at the same time, governments must have a freedom to govern, to change direction. Maybe budgetary priorities have changed. And if you say, well, the government can't move because it's in a contract, you're basically saying that a contract prevents a government from governing. Over the years, it has been recognised in court decisions that government must have the freedom, if necessary, in certain circumstances, to break contracts because of some overriding public interest or a new policy or possibly a reordering of priorities under the budget. Legislative termination, which would be the only way in which this could be done for this project, assuming that it's a contract that will be embodied in legislation. The idea of legislative termination invokes some fundamental constitutional concepts, and that is that Parliament is supreme, and if Parliament says something through legislation, then so be it. And that idea means that it is possible for Parliament to pass an act which says this contract that was made between the government and whoever is hereby shut down. You wouldn't draft it that way, but that's effectively what the Act says. And so that is the possibility for the situation where there's an election, new government comes in, the contract has already been put in place by legislation, and then the new government has to ponder the possibility of passing more legislation. Parliament can always change an act that it's made before. It can pass a later act and say that doesn't count anymore, or to this extent it doesn't count. They can do anything they like. Perhaps the misinformation that seems to be around about whether governments can shut down contracts, and people saying, no, you can't do that, that might be informed by the fact that 3 jurisdictions in Australia, the Commonwealth and the 2 territories, have constitutional provisions which say, a constitutional provision which says that it is not permissible for the Parliament to make a law that constitutes an acquisition of property other than on just terms. So it's a constitutional protection against a law that constitutes an acquisition of property, a taking away of property without paying proper compensation. That exists. The Commonwealth is constrained by that. Northern Territory, ACT are constrained by that. Now, how on earth can that apply to a contract? Well, lawyers consider the notion of property is much broader than the popular notion of property. We all know what real property is, we all know what goods are and things like that, and maybe even intellectual property. But how can a contract be property? Well, the answer that lawyers give is that it is a type of property that's recognised. It is the right to enforce your rights in court. That's what it is. It's the fact that you've got an enforceable right, which contracts give you, is a type of property. It's called, mysteriously, lawyers like to mystify, it's called a shows in action. That means that if the Parliament made a law which took away contract rights, that could be construed as an acquisition of property. And therefore, if you were the Commonwealth, the Northern Territory or the ACT, you'd have to be careful to make sure that it survived a challenge, because it may infringe that constitutional protection that exists in those 3 jurisdictions. Now, the good news, maybe, is that that constitutional protection does not exist in the states. There is no just terms provision in the Victorian Constitution, or the New South Wales Constitution, or the Western Australian Constitution, etc. It only exists at Commonwealth level and in the 2 territories. That means that a state parliament can pass a law that constitutes an acquisition of property other than on just terms, and there's nothing anyone can do about it.